So now that you're all stuck in here with us as the doors are shutting, hi, I'm Jacqueline Brick. I'm a freelance writer and editor, and I'm with the Philadelphia Lolita community.
I'm Abigail Davis. I'm also with the Philadelphia Lolita community, and I'm currently a student and also an intern at my local historical society.
And tonight we're here to talk to you about Lolita. The name of this panel is Paladins and Petticoats. We're going to start with some basic Lolita one-on-one stuff. For those of you who don't know what Lolita is, we have a Lolita in the audience tonight, which is super exciting. Oh my god, there's one more of us. Okay, cool. And then we're going to, talk about what Lolita is and what it isn't and how it sort of interacts with gaming and the nerd community at large. So to start, what is Lolita?
Okay, so Lolita is a Japanese fashion. It began on the streets of Harajuku, Japan, which is Tokyo's fashion district. And it began in about the 80s to late 80s. It's sort of difficult to pinpoint because Lolita evolved out of a number of different Japanese street styles, namely one of them being visual kei. And visual kei was a popular style that was worn by a performer named Mana who was in a band called Malice Mizer. And he first started wearing Lolita during his performances. Now, the Lolita that he wore back then is very, very dissimilar from what we wear nowadays. It was very much closer to the visual kei look, which maybe you would relate more to punk or goth look. So it, like I said, it began late 80s, early 90s, but it really started, gaining traction in the late 90s to early 2000s. And that's when some of the big Lolita brands really started cropping up, namely Angelic Pretty and Moi Mimi Moitié, or MMM, which is also Mana's brand.
The biggest brands today are currently Angelic Pretty, Baby the Stars Shine Bright, Alice and the Pirates. If you know any Lolitas, you may have heard them refer to this as brand or brando. Having a dress like this is considered sort of a status symbol. Lolita, like any fashion, has evolved over the years. What we call old school is Lolita with a lot of lace and maybe not so much a blouse and wearing an elaborate headdress, whereas the Lolita Abigail and I are wearing right now is more classic, more sweet. Abigail is a little more garden with the straw hat. I'm a little more princess with the pearl headdress and the red hood. There's a bunch of different substyles of Lolita. We're actually going to show you one of the substyles on our friend here. This is Veronica. Everybody say hi to Veronica.
Hi, Veronica.
She's a little shy, so you'll have to bear with us. She's Abigail's girlfriend.
She is.
Oh.
So, like any style, there's some base elements to Lolita. The first, and probably one of the most important style, and we're going to be scandalous, we're going to pull up her skirt, is the petticoat. The petticoat is your biggest shaping garment in Lolita.
As you can see, we're both wearing them right now, and it gives the dress the iconic poof, which has evolved over the years. When old school Lolita was popular, which at the time it was not old school, it was just the style, smaller petticoats were worn, and sometimes they weren't worn at all, but that's sort of just how the progression of the style has changed through the years. Now even, there are some longer styles that are more popular, and no poof is coming back into style a little bit, but it's not really mainstream just yet.
Normally, Lolita dresses sit a little above or a little below the knee. There are two styles of Lolita dresses. One is called an OP, or a one-piece. This is not a one-piece. This is what is referred to as a JSK, or a jumper skirt. You can see it has straps. It has, a cute little bow in the front. It sort of poofs out with the petticoat. And a JSK is worn with a blouse. Sorry, go ahead.
You can also do some different things if you don't want to wear a blouse under it. For example, today Jacqueline and I are both not wearing blouses, but we are wearing JSKs. We're wearing what's called boleros. You can also wear a shawl over top of your shoulders, basically anything that covers the shoulders, because Lolita's really, I don't want to say it's a style about modesty, but there is a certain level of modesty that's involved with Lolita, and one of the things that's generally considered correct is to cover the shoulders, mostly because Lolita is based on looking put together, and that's one of the things that comes into play.
Lolita is very heavily based on Rococo and Victorian styles, so you get a lot of over-the-top looks. Have any of you seen the movie Kamikaze Girls? No? Oh, well, that's a shame. It's an awesome movie. You should all watch it, by the way. It's very girl positive. It's about a Lolita named Momoko who has trouble empathizing with other people, and she becomes reluctant friends with a biker chick. I don't remember the biker chick's name, and I feel bad about that.
Well, her name is Ichigo, which is sort of a little bit of a secret because that means strawberry, and that's sort of a cutesy name, and she's supposed to be very edgy. So she doesn't usually go by that, but Momoko does find out that that's her real name.
And it's a very famous Lolita film, and in the film, Momoko rarely wears a blouse. In old school, which is what we were talking about earlier, sort of the styles of the 80s and 90s.
The film was set in the early 2000s. I believe it was filmed in 2003.
Yeah. Blouses weren't considered necessary because you could wear Lolita like you were wearing a sundress.
So if you guys don't mind, we're going to go ahead and break down some more of the elements of the Lolita coordinate. That's what we call our outfits because you're coordinating different pieces. We call them cords or coordinates. So after you have the blouse, that's your bottommost layer. You have a blouse, and you have the petticoat, and then under the petticoat we wear what are called bloomers.
They're totally cheering for us, don't worry.
Bloomers are basically shorts worn for modesty. They can be ruffled, but you can always get away with just some normal pajama shorts. The reason we wear these is because the shape of a Lolita dress is incredibly conducive to
skirts being blown up, or skirts being blown to the
skirts,
side.
and also sometimes people are not the most polite, and they want to know what makes your skirt so puffy, and so
we're going to talk about that a little bit later, don't worry.
That's a common problem with older ladies and also children, so for that reason we wear a garment underneath to be a little bit more modest. Another essential element to a Lolita garment or a coordinate are socks. And we have a couple different types of socks that you can wear. These personally are called OTKs, which stands for over the knee socks. And they hit just about here. But you could also wear tights. You can wear ankle socks, which are just down by your ankle.
You can wear mid-calf socks.
Yeah.
Really anything that helps the outfit look more put together and more coordinated.
Yep, any sort of leg wear, but it's absolutely essential to the look. And so then here we have a little hat, and hats are not necessary, but some type of headwear is necessary. I also put in here a little headband, and it's got a little bow on it. We call these head bows. So
head bows can be about that small. Sometimes they can be about the size of our nice Kiki over here. Sometimes they can be bigger than my head. It really depends on what sort of look you're going for.
Yeah. Obviously, we styled this a little bit more classic. That's one of the three major sub-styles of Lolita. There are sub-styles. So the three major sub-styles are sweet, classic, and gothic. I would say that Jacqueline and I both today went a little bit more of the sweet route. Typically, I'm a classic Lolita, and Jacqueline veers towards the gothic side of things.
We're going a little different.
Yeah, we decided we'd mix it up a little bit.
Yeah. So sweet Lolita is probably the most iconic form of Lolita. It's usually in bright colors, bright blues, pinks, purples.
Sometimes called pastel vomit.
Really depends on who you're talking to. So it usually features fruits or candies or carousel horses, anything that people associate with being cute and fun and happy.
Gothic Lolita is actually the oldest style of Lolita because it evolved from the visual kei look, and that was what Mana originally curated the style to be like. Gothic is actually dying out a little bit, unfortunately. It's very sad because Gothic is a fantastic style when done properly. But yeah, right now, Classic is really getting its moment, which is really good because it was out of style for a little while, and I'm obviously very personally happy about that. So a few of the differences between the things. Color can play a big element to it, especially with sweet.
Yeah.
Gothic and Classic, the lines are a little bit more blurred. You can have a number of different a number of different colors in the styles. With Gothic, you always go towards more jewel tones and darker colors. Classic, though, you can do darker colors as well, or you can have a mix of things and do a sweet classic look. There are also different shapes involved. So for a sweet look, you almost always will have a big poof because that's, very cute, very girly. But Classic is really getting to experience some of the longer, less poofy side of things. There are some dresses that might go all the way down to your ankles in Classic. That's a much newer look. Some people don't necessarily consider that Lolita, but for those who do, that is something that has become on trend lately, and Gothic also might have some longer looks. So the way that we get the different shapes are with different styles of petticoats. So if you see under this, it's a very gradual, progressive poof.
We call this an A-line.
Yes. The alternative look is called a bell-shaped petticoat, and that's what's worn under sweet, and it's, it's a little bit more rounded up top. There's a little bit more volume, and it comes straight out from the waistline. So that's how we establish different looks underneath our skirts.
There are, of course, other sub-styles. You might have bittersweet, which is actually a combination of sweet and gothic. You have Garden Lolita, which sort of features more of the straw hats and more of what Abigail's wearing right now, more sort of outdoors.
We also might call this Country Lolita.
Garden or Country Lolita. This is closer to what is referred to as Hime or Princess Lolita. It features a lot of jewels, a lot of ruffles, a lot of pearls, very sort of regal look. Sailor Lolita, you guys might have seen, that's probably one of the more common ones in the US, is the little sailor collars, the white piping, the blue fabric, very nautical look. It's very cute. It's actually, that one's coming into style a lot as well, sort of on the heels of classic. So, like all fashions, there are rules, and those rules are sometimes made to be broken. If you know how to style a Lolita coordinate, then you know how to style a Lolita coordinate without maybe a blouse, or without socks, or without headwear, or, maybe with a very large poof with a gothic dress, or a small poof with, a sweet dress. Really, as long as you can make it look put together and elegant, then you're doing it right.
And of course, certain styles of dresses are more accommodating towards breaking the rules than others. For example, this type of JSK would not look good without a blouse underneath a bit.
But this one,
yeah. As you can see, the sleeves
Whoa! Yeah, but as you can see, it has the little ruffles on my shoulders. This would actually work very well as a summer coordinate. So this is something I could wear without a blouse if I chose to.
Yep. And there's different footwear options as well. That's something else we should probably discuss, is that footwear is very important in Lolita. And so one of the most popular shoe styles that you will see with a Lolita coordinate is a Mary Jane shoe, which is a pretty mainstream style shoe. And it has the strap across it. The reason for this is not necessarily because the Mary Jane style is mandatory, it's because everything in Lolita is about attention to detail. And so the extra little ankle strap gives a little bit more, a little bit more visual interest. A lot of our shoes also will have bows on them. Jacqueline and I both have bows on our shoes. So you can go with any type of footwear, but a lot of times there are heels worn. Flat shoes usually are not as generally worn in a more typical coordinate. You might wear flatter shoes in a casual coordinate, but the higher the heel, the better, the more elegant.
The higher the heel, the closer to God.
There you go.
So now that we know what Lolita is, let's talk a little bit about what Lolita is not. How many of you have heard of Lolita in the context of a fetish? Thought so. So what's important to note is when you see someone walking around in Lolita, they are not proclaiming that they want to have sex with you because they're dressed as a little girl. This is actually a huge mistake a lot of convention goers make. Lolita, the reason it became so big is at the time in the 90s, Japanese women were being driven more towards this very elegant adult style, very form-fitting.
They wanted to find men to suit them and get married.
The idea was, you go to college, you get your MRS degree, you find a husband who will support you. You need to look the part of the housewife. You need to look the part of the person who is going to be there and be stable for her man. And there was, this is actually around the same time the punk movement in Japan had started up, and a bunch of younger women were like, no, that's not what we want. We don't want to have to constantly dress for the male gaze. So this is where you got the kawaii movement, this is where you got visual kei, and this is where you got Lolita. The idea behind Lolita is that you're dressing like a princess, or you're dressing, you're dressing for yourself. You're not dressing for the eyes of those around you, except, maybe other Lolitas. How many of you think the name Lolita comes from the Nabokov book? You're not entirely wrong. Possibly. There's a very apocryphal story, and I haven't, unfortunately, been able to find any reliable sources, but it's one of my personal favorites, so I'm going to tell it, is when Lolita actually became a thing, and Angelic Pretty, which was just called Pretty at the time.
They were more of a Hinegaru style. They catered more toward, it's a little bit more mature, but it was still cutesy looking.
When Pretty came into style, a lot of men would sort of shout, "Hey Lolita," at the girls who were wearing it, because the Nabokov book had just been translated into Japanese, and it was sort of like, well, you're not fitting the sort of Japanese oeuvre that we're, projecting. So you must clearly be attempting to be a child, so, hey Lolita. And the Lolitas heard this and were like, okay, fine. We know what we're calling our style now. Fuck you guys.
So the misconceptions are largely due in part to the novel, and that is something that we deal with on a daily basis, is people misconstruing our fashion as a fetish. And it is important to note that the two are not mutually exclusive. There are Lolitas that do have Lolita fetishes, but they generally try not to bring it into the substyle because, you know, it reflects on the entire com when you do that.
Yeah.
And you don't want everybody doesn't want to be associated with that.
Yeah.
So respectfully, those who are involved in Lolita kinks do try to keep it out of the style a bit.
Another thing Lolita is we are not trying to regress to being little girls. The point of the fashion is to look pretty and to have fun with it. It's not necessarily, oh, I want to be 8 again, or, you know, I'm just going to go outside and play with my dolls. It's, no, I am spending the time and money to look put together, and so, you know, that others can see that I'm creative and put together.
It's kind of something that we point out often. How many children do you see running around dressed like this? You know, it's not a very infantile style, even though some people might think it is. And there are some motifs that are featured in Lolita
that are childlike.
But it's not about looking like a child. It's maybe about tapping into your inner child, but not about
regressing.
Like a child.
Yeah.
Yes.
You had a question?
I don't know what the Nabokov book is. That's appropriate
I
question.
didn't say that.
Go for it.
Okay, so there was a book called Lolita by an author named Vladimir Nabokov. He was a Russian author, but he wrote the book in English. And so what his book was about, basically, was about it was told from the first-person perspective of a male narrator named Humbert, who became sexually attracted to a 12-year-old girl who was the 12-year-old daughter of his landlord. And the problem here is that most people only know shallow information about the book, so they see it as a novel about a sexually promiscuous 12-year-old girl.
Or as a sort of taboo love story,
Yes.
or as a, you know, oh, well, if you're mature beyond your years, then, you know, you should be allowed to date whoever you want. The issue is Nabokov himself has stated that his narrator is a rapist.
Yes.
His narrator is a pedophilic rapist, and he is lying to you, the reader, and trying to justify his reactions to Lolita.
It's a very psychologically exploration book where you really are seeing this through the eyes of someone who's absolutely convinced that this 12-year-old girl is trying to seduce him. And that is sadly not the truth. And in reality, there are windows in the book where you look in and you see how bad this situation actually is. But for the entire book, you're along for the ride with this gentleman who honestly believes that a 12-year-old is trying to seduce him.
And is honestly kind of a shit person. But
it's a very interesting book. We're kind of making it sound terrible, but it's a fantastic read. It's very well written, and it's very good for anybody to read. It was on a lot of high school reading lists. It's a really good book to read.
Partially why there's so many misconceptions in the book. Yes?
I'm going to second the book being really well because I do know someone read it and liked it. The only thing is, I didn't even hear about Lolita until yesterday. Someone like you guys was kind of like, I was like, can I take your picture? You were like, good. And she talked to me about it, and that's why I'm here. It's just all I saw when I Googled it was that book. You said you had business cards. Are you guys planning on doing something online sometime soon, or do you already have something?
So there's actually several really awesome websites about beginner Lolita stuff. There's hellolace.net.
No.
Did Hellolace go down?
Hellolace is now defunct. Please never go on it. It has a very bad virus that you
Sorry.
on your computer.
Hellolace.net.
Please do not go on Hellolace.
Sorry, my bad. I didn't know that. Hellolace.net used to be awesome. It was this great, you know, beginner Lolita library and explained all the different substyles and which brands were which.
I think the most accessible resource for anybody who's
Is
really
Library?
starting to well, I was going to lolitatips.tumblr.com. It's lolita-tips.tumblr.com. It's one person who runs the blog, and she has a lot of resources linked on there that'll help you get started. So, yeah, no problem.
There's also, once you sort of get an idea of the fashion, there's lolilibrary.net, which has all of the thousands of different dresses and socks and blouses, you know, linked by style and by color, and it'll help you find what you're looking for. Based on name, it won't really link you to sites where you can buy it, but it'll give you an idea of what you're looking for.
Thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions before we continue?
Real quick. So, again, similar story. Before this, no idea what Lolitas were.
Okay.
My boyfriend Drake told me a little bit about it, but he like filled me in like the pieces. But how much of it does it take from like I love history, like I'm a big historian. So how much does the Lolita fashion style draw from historic? I mean, it all looks very historical. Like.
So, it's really more of an adaptation. It's what they saw, and it was a lot of
A lot of Rococo influences.
Yeah,
You got
at
a
the
lot
time,
of
at the time when Lolita started becoming popular, there were a lot of shoujo mangas out in Japan that were. Have you guys ever read Maiden of Versailles at all? It's a manga, and
it's about Marie Antoinette.
yeah, it's Versailles. So, I would say that most of the style does not take directly from historical fashion. Classic is the most traditionalist style that you will get. Yesterday I was walking around with a Jane Austen type bonnet on. So there are elements that it pulls from it, but on the grand scale, nothing is really historically accurate.
Yeah, we're not, there are some Lolitas, it's not really a sub-style yet because there's not enough, but there are some Lolitas who do chords based on, again, like outfits from Versailles or outfits from the Romantic era. And those are always really fun because a lot of them are handmade and they're beautiful and you can't really get them anywhere else. But yeah, on the whole, the idea is to sort of look softer and more antiquated, but not necessarily historically accurate.
There are some dresses that very much pull from history. For those of you, probably you, who are familiar with the brand Mary Magdalene, they have a very famous dress called Fleur Antoinette that looks very close to what you would see Marie Antoinette wearing. So that's one of the things. But really the biggest difference is that our dresses are all short for the most part.
Yeah.
So that really puts a damper on the historically accurate part. We would have been seen as a little bit risque, I believe, back then.
I mean, I suppose the shape is actually closer to a Victorian, like, older child, like prepubescent child's dress, where you could actually get something that might be a little below the knee, instead of something that had to come to your ankles, but, you know, on the whole, it's about looking cute. It's not necessarily about drawing from a certain period of history. How are we on time?
7:21.
Oh, sweet. So, yeah.
Okay, so I think we'll keep talking about some of the other misconceptions that we get with Lolita, if you want to share some of your most interesting stories. So there are some reoccurring themes that we get very often that are very weird.
So I'm actually going to go into my horror stories now, which is my favorite part of this panel, and this is the thing we've been talking about, like, oh yeah, which horror stories are we going to tell on this panel? So I guess my favorite one is the idea that if Lolitas are in public, they are there for you to gawk at. Of course, if someone is dressed strangely in public, you're going to look at them. That's how that works. But same with Lolitas and cosplayers. You don't take their pictures without asking first. We were at a meetup when a group of Lolitas get together. It's called a meetup, or a community, which is often shortened to com. Sometimes we like to call it a flock. That's sort of an inside joke we have, because we get called Bo Peep a lot. We were at a Cherry Blossom Sunday meetup in Philadelphia a couple years ago, and one of the things that we noticed is that people would just sort of stop and take our pictures, and it only got worse as the day went on because sometimes they'd try to pose us. Like, they would grab us by the shoulders and go, "Stand this way." Like, what? Excuse me? And this is sort of a running theme with a lot of Lolitas in one space. Later that year, we had a Halloween meetup, and we were all sitting at a table in a tavern, and, you know, we weren't really expecting much because it was sort of a darker space, and I was talking to my friend Tori, who is wonderful, by the way. She's great. And she sort of turned, she was wearing, you know, a very nice dark dress, sort of looked like a spooky gothic nun. It was awesome. And we're talking about something or other, and she sort of turns her head like a Terminator and goes, "Excuse me, if you want to take a picture, you're going to fucking ask first." And behind the head of the person who is in charge of our community is this 50-something couple who's trying to be sneaky with an iPad. Like, just in our faces, and they sort of drop it, and then they stand there awkwardly, and we go back to our conversation, and 5 minutes later, she turns her head and goes, "Are you still fucking here?" As they're attempting to be sneaky with their iPad, again, without talking to any of us. There were 12 of us in that room, and they were just standing in the doorway with their iPad.
Why can't people just ask?
Because then that would be seen as treating us as people. And you can't treat us as people. We're women in feminine outfits. And feminine outfits in Western society are coded as less powerful, objectified, and generally not worth your time.
Another common problem that we get is people that do ask if they can take a picture and then are very disgruntled, sometimes to the point of ignoring your answer if you say no. I have a story from this year. You weren't there. At our Cherry Blossom Festival for this year, we were all sitting down eating. It's a picnic type event. It's all outdoors. My friends and I were sitting down eating on the ground on our picnic blankets, and a gentleman came over and asked if he could take our picture, and we said, "Oh, not right now. We're eating. Come catch up with us later." And his response was, "Oh no, I'm sure that you guys can take one little picture. It's only going to take a second." And we said, "No, we can't take a picture right now. We're eating." So he continued to bother us, so we got up and walked away. And sometime later, we were all taking pictures of each other because we do coordinate shots. And he came over again and said, "Okay, it's picture time," and then stood next to us and took our picture, or his wife took pictures of him standing next to us. So that was a very fun interaction. But on a lighter note, some of the other things that we hear often are you in a play?" which is a very specific question, and I don't know why so many girls relate to that.
What are you dressing up as?
Yeah,
that's
what are you
fairly common.
cosplaying as? Yeah.
That's fine. We don't mind that one.
Yeah.
Hey Bo Peep.
Yeah.
Sort of an updated version of Hey Lolita.
Where are your sheep?
Yeah, where are
I
your
didn't
sheep?
hear that one 17 times yesterday or anything. Yeah, my favorite one that I've ever gotten, which this is not a common one, a lady kind of ghosted over to us with a very blank expression and went, "Are you guys the American Girl dolls?"
I forgot about that.
And we kind of were all taken aback, and we didn't really know how to answer, so we kind of were just like, "No." And then she just went, "Oh," and just drifted away. Some other positive comments that we get, a lot of times older ladies will come over and tell you, "Oh, I remember dressing like that when I was a little girl.
Yep.
It's so nice to see young people dressing up," which is a great compliment.
Yeah.
I love that one.
That's a great one. Older ladies are kind of a mixed bag. You'd think it would actually be the guys who are going to touch you without your permission. Oh no, it's the older white Christian ladies.
Yeah, it's always there.
Yes.
It is.
So I go to a convention every year called DexCon. It's awesome. And every year they have to share the space with a megachurch that rents the hotel out on Sundays. And so I was walking around in the same coordinate that I am wearing now, and this older lady stops me and goes, "Oh my gosh, are you with the convention? You look like Bo Peep, it's so cute." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm with the convention, I'm running some wire. This is a style called Lolita." And as I'm talking, she lifts the hem of my $300 dress and starts going, "Ooh," and playing with my petticoats, and I had to stop in the middle and go, "Don't touch me." And she sort of looked at me like I had peed on her dog. And I said, no, you don't understand. This is nothing personal. This is a $300 dress. I get really, paranoid about it. She goes, "Oh, well, if that's how you want to be, good morning." And walks up and I'm like, "Oh, okay, bye." Wandered off to my game.
On the topic of prices, that's a good time to segue into a discussion about different brands. I know that we briefly touched on this earlier, but as Jacqueline mentioned, one of the status symbols in Lolita is owning brand, but it's actually a very antiquated feeling or a very antiquated idea, because as Lolita has progressed, it's gotten a lot more mainstream. In the early 2000s, you literally had to swim to Japan if you wanted to get Lolita clothing.
Well, maybe not necessarily swim. You might have to fly or take a ship, but you could swim. If you felt like making the Trans-Pacific trek, that's up to you.
Lolita was not at all popular stateside. It had a very small community, and of course the internet was not quite as expansive as it is nowadays. So not as many people were able to find out about it stateside. So those who did, it was very limited. A lot of them were making their own clothing. They were kind of going through what we now call their Ida phases. Ida is...
Can I actually?
Yes, I'll let Jacqueline go for this one.
Ida is sort of a Japanese pun of the word itai, which means ow my fucking head. Saying someone is Ida means it is actually physically painful to look at you. Yeah. There is something so wrong with your outfit that I cannot stand to look at you.
You are so bad at Lolita that it hurts my eyes.
Yep.
So a lot of these girls were not dressing very well. They were dressing Ida. But as Lolita has progressed, there have become a lot more online resources. People are able to learn how to do Lolita properly, and they're able to buy Lolita a lot easier. So there are some secondhand auction sites where you can buy directly from Japan. Some sites ship even straight from Japan brands do.
I'm going to plug Lace Market here for a moment for those of you who are interested in Lolita. Lace Market is actually one of the best sites to buy secondhand Lolita. It's like Lolita eBay.
It's egl.lacemarket.us for those of you interested.
Anyway.
Okay. So the big brands, they are very expensive and they're not always accessible to newcomers, and that's part of the reason that a lot of newcomers have a problem getting into Lolita properly. But the thing is they're missing out on this huge resource, a Chinese marketplace called Taobao, which is actually where a lot of indie brands are starting now with different Lolita dresses. And indie brands are really upping their game, and some of their dresses are just as high quality as brand dresses are now.
If not better.
Yeah. And not only that, it is valid to mention that Lolita brands don't exactly cater to a wide variety of sizes.
No.
They are made for Japanese girls who on average are pretty slender. And that is very frustrating for a lot of Western girls who don't fit that body type. Even those who are slender don't necessarily have the same body type as a Japanese girl would. So it can be very infuriating to find something that fits your size. And so while some girls do fit in brand, a lot don't, and that really shuts out a large demographic of Lolita, which is why it's fantastic that we now have a lot of new resources, because they're really, these indie brands know the Western body type. They know that they're not necessarily going to fit into this very thin Japanese standard, and that's great. So they're able to make things that accommodate slightly larger sizes or even custom sizing.
There's actually currently in the Lolita community, there is a struggle for body positivity. It's actually gotten a lot better recently, but in the beginning the idea was if you are above a size 4, you can't wear Lolita. It will look wrong, you'll make the fashion look terrible, nobody will take us seriously. But as this has progressed, there's a lot of sites that cater to normal or plus size Lolitas, which has actually caused the community to be much more open and accepting. And like, for a lot of people, Lolita is very empowering because it's this idea that, maybe even though I don't fit in the Western style of beauty, I can make myself beautiful in the way that I want to feel beautiful.
That's a big reason why I personally started wearing Lolita. As soon as I put on my first Lolita dress when I was still in my Ida phase, I felt beautiful for the first time in a very long time. It gave me the confidence that I would have never had before. One of the big things for me was when I walked out on the street and people were staring at me. I knew they were staring at me because of what I was wearing and not because of how I actually looked physically or how my face was or some other outside reason. I knew right then and there they're looking at me because of my clothes, and I feel great about it.
I actually struggle with an anxiety disorder. Part of my anxiety disorder is my nose too big, is my hair not pretty enough, is my butt too big? And when I wear Lolita, I feel like I'm wearing armor. My dress is very heavy, so it's very grounding. I can change the shape of my body. I can, emphasize or de-emphasize what I want to with my petticoats or whatever dress or skirt that I'm wearing. And, it makes me feel like, not like someone else, but like the best version of myself. So probably what most of you guys are here for is how Lolita interacts with gaming. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit now. I was supposed to have a copy of Elevenses, but I don't, which sucks, because the person who promised to bring it to me didn't. But that's okay, I'll talk a little bit about it anyway. So as Lolita has gained popularity, it sort of started to bleed into mainstream culture and gaming culture, and there's a lot more games sort of based around the idea of propriety and modesty and, personal beauty. There's a game called Elevenses, which I mentioned, which is a game about British tea time and behaving properly at British tea time and being properly dressed. And it's a very cute game. It's very positive. It's not like, oh, well, if you're this size, then you can't come to tea because then you'll be embarrassing us. If you're wearing the wrong color of cravat with your jacket, then you won't be able to come to tea because, goodness, you're not put together. There's a game called What Shall I Wear, which is a little bit older, but started around the same time that the Lolita community bled into the U.S. It's very much about, okay, you're going to this event and you want to wear this clothing. How are you going to do that? And also, it's been blending into a lot of sort of magical girl games and more sort of anime-style games as a very positive thing, as a thing that is empowering for female and male characters alike. We didn't actually mention OG. Did you want to?
Sure.
Because you're better at this.
Okay, so there are men who are in the Lolita fashion. Sometimes they go by Brolita, but for the most part,
Dude Lita,
usually
Brolita,
there's been a
Boy
movement
Lita.
recently to just call them Lolitas because there's no need to segregate them. They're still Lolitas. They're just as good as a female Lolita.
or gender neutral Lolita.
Yeah, of course. But there are also a couple sibling styles to Lolita that would be appropriate. This gentleman might be wearing something a little bit along the lines of,
Yeah.
very nice.
Check that out.
One of the styles that's called Aristocrat or EGA, which is Elegant Gothic Aristocrat. That's a little bit more to that style. It's a little bit more Victorian based. It's a little bit more historical. There is women's and men's fashion in EGA. And there's also a fashion known as boy style or OG. And what OG is the word OG means prince in Japanese, and so it's a little bit more, it's a little younger than you would see the men's style of aristocrat being. And it's very regal, very elegant. And there are women that do wear boy style and OG as well. But
It looks, if any of you have seen like a copy of The Little Prince, it looks very, very close to what the title character is wearing.
yeah, you might wear like some knickers and some socks and
Little cute little hat tilted to the side.
a lot of the Lolita rules still apply in OG, even though OG is seen as a different style than Lolita completely. So
Where are we on time?
we're good. 7:36.
All right. We're actually going to open the floor up to questions now. So, yeah, you first.
So, I'm an absolute new to this, I have said.
Sure.
So, have you guys seen the anime or High School Host Club?
Yes.
Is any of that, like, kind of like that?
I don't know, I
Some-
would
some
think
of
that the
women's
one
clothes?
episode where all of the guys dressed up as girls, and they are all wearing very tight and then huge poofy dresses.
Yeah,
and they're
a little.
very elaborate.
That's a little closer to Elegant Gothic Aristocrat.
But they weren't dressing up to be sexy, they were dressing up to be a sister.
Yeah.
Right.
So that
So, yeah, so
their
they're-
kind of mindset is what Lolita is.
That's a little closer, like we said, to Elegant Gothic Aristocrat, because the style is more regal. It's longer and a little more mature than Lolita is. But yeah, it's about the same mindset.
The only problem slightly with a lot of people come to Lolita through anime. They see these Lolita girls in anime and they go, I want to look like that. But the only problem with that is that a lot of times people who are doing the art for animes are not Lolitas themselves, so they might not know the specific rules behind it. But everybody starts somewhere, everyone grows, and there are actually some animes that are very Lolita appropriate. Rose and Maiden, for example, is very Lolita accurate, if any of you have seen that one.
Did you guys ever see the anime Vampire Knight?
No.
Alright,
unfortunately.
well there's in the intro and ending song, there's actually I believe it's a Lolita
I'm
singer
pretty
who does
sure-
like violins and stuff
Oh,
like
cool.
that. And I don't know.
I'm pretty sure I've heard that that's a pretty accurate portrayal. I'm not really an anime person myself, but I will.
Before we take any more questions, one of the other major issues that we didn't mention is that a lot of media about Lolitas is not made by Lolitas.
Oh,
You
I'm sure.
you get a lot of people who are coming into it through, like, oh, these girls look cute, so let's give them a backstory as to why they're dressing like this, and it's almost always they're doing it for the men in their life.
Yeah.
No.
And there also is some unfortunate crossover between Lolitas and the living doll community, which they're a separate community. They have their thing, we have our thing, but it's not the same thing.
And like she said, sometimes they cross over, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But
And
neither
a
she
lot
nor
of-
I participate in the living doll community.
Inaccurate media perpetuates this myth. For example, TLC, everyone's favorite TV channel that always makes everything so accurate.
Yeah.
On their show, My Strange Addiction, featured a girl named Venus Angelic. I don't know if any of you have heard of her. She's a very famous YouTuber. And she does not wear Lolita, but occasionally she mentions wearing Lolita in her videos. She doesn't exactly follow the rules correctly. And so she was featured on this show in a very negative light. She was featured as somebody who had adjustment issues, and that's why it's her strange addiction, that she's addicted to being a doll.
Yep.
And so a lot of people see us and they go, oh, My Strange Addiction on TLC, you guys are one of them, you're living dolls. And that's not the case for us personally.
What was that documentary that we mentioned earlier?
There are some really good documentaries on YouTube that you can look up to actually get an accurate portrayal of Lolita, one of them being Sugar Coated.
Sugar-coated is awesome. They did have Lolitas involved in the production process.
Yep.
So Lolitas are portrayed very positively and generally pretty accurately.
And there was also a show called, I believe, Strange Threads, Weird Threads, something along those lines, that also featured a Lolita that was very accurate.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we had more questions. You.
How long have each of you been in the community tour?
I've been in Philadelphia for about 2.5 years now.
I started,
Yeah, what they said.
Philadelphia!
my first outing in Lolita was at Otakon in 2014, and I did not do it very well. But my first actual Lolita coordinate that panned out properly was in February of 2015, so I've been wearing it for about a year and a half.
You.
Do you guys, have you ever like dressed up in like other costumes? Do you cosplay, or is this like, and if so, like what drew you to this style and that whole process?
That's a great question. I love that question. I used to be a Civil War reenactor. I also used to be a Revolutionary War reenactor. And I've loved dressing up since I was little, and I really wanted to find a style that I could sort of, wear out and feel pretty without feeling like, out of place necessarily. And Lolita's a really good fit for that, because while it's different, it doesn't make me feel anathema necessarily.
For me personally, I guess our stories are kind of similar. I grew up in a pretty conservative family, but I always had a very feminine, very individualistic style. And so I always wanted to have my little goth emo phase, and I never really got to have it because I had very conservative parents who didn't allow for that. But I was very into historical recreation costumes. And so one day I was on Polyvore, I believe, which is a website. And I started seeing all these very Ida outfits, and I was like, oh, that's great, I want to wear that. That looks awesome. When I was in like 9th grade, maybe. So that's where that began for me. But I think the love of Lolita just started, the first time I put a dress on. I just thought, this is it.
Yeah, it's really hard to not feel awesome when you're wearing a dress that fits well.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Purely curiosity, like top tier as far as price, what does that go up to?
Oh gosh. It really depends on the brand and who's selling. I've seen brand prices go up to $600 and resale prices go up to like $750, $800.
Yeah, there's a very famous dress called Cat's Tea Party that I recently saw sold for $3,000.
Yeah.
I did actually add up the price of my coordinate today, so my coordinate today is about $560.
The 3,000, that was the whole coordinate?
No, that was
just
just
the
the
dress.
dress.
The one
That was
dress.
just the dress.
So it's more common to purchase like made dresses rather than made.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
very common.
Yeah, my coordinate, actually a lot of this is secondhand. Secondhand is probably the best way for an American Lolita to buy.
There is a lot of inflation and scalping in the
Yeah.
Western Lolita market, unfortunately.
But the most expensive part of my outfit is my underskirt. This is not a petticoat, this is an underskirt. I'm wearing it over my petticoat. This was $50 because it was custom made for me. But this dress, which normally retails for about $300, I went to a Lolita swap meet and I got it for $10. Plus a corset. Thank you very much.
Yes, savings!
Yeah, so mine probably comes to somewhere around like $75 with all the pieces I have.
I'm not as good at being frugal, apparently.
I'm real good at being frugal because it's either frugality or starve. Any other questions?
I wanted to just I had a question in my mind that really kind of leads into the idea of, so when this was originally just buying from brands, how much were they brands that were actually led by Lolitas, or at least women-owned, for as much as that does have an overlap, which is not necessary. And then how has that developed to maybe one that's less just giving large amounts of money to someone who is, not in the community?
Actually, a lot of Lolita brands are women-owned, and their designers are females, their seamstresses are females. That's why actually there's a little bit of controversy about this. There is a company called Bodyline, where a lot of beginners are sent to, and it's shifted over to the point where a lot of Lolitas don't send beginners to them anymore purely because of the shady business practices of their owner, who basically was a huge pervert, but he sort of garnered a popular name in the Lolita community.
Mr. Yan is sort of the archetypal, he goes by the name Mr. Yan. He's sort of the archetypal chivalrous pervert, because his whole deal is, I will go find my princess in the Lolita community, and every time he shows up, he always, singles someone out and sort of lavishes her gifts, and it's not really the sort of like the creepy, touching, let me be near you, but it's very much the I own you because I think you're pretty.
Yeah, there was a modeling contest through Bodyline for a long time where the models were expected to work without pay and were put into very trying situations where they would be there for many hours a day taking all these photos for a photo shoot, only getting recognition in return if that. One girl I know had all of her stuff stolen and wasn't able to get it back because she was living in Bodyline's accommodations they were paying for her, and they said, oh, well, we're not giving this back to you now because you're not paying for it. And just a lot of just very creepy, shady antics. Yeah. So for the most part, even though it might take a while, because those things have been going on for a while and they've only recently come to light, for the most part, Lolitas, being a very female-dominated group, really do look into the business tactics of the people that they're buying from and are very concerned about that. So that is something that we definitely take into consideration.
Another company that we're very wary of is Milano. They resell dresses and they attempt to sell their own dresses at brand prices. A lot of times their dresses are often glued together or made with awful material. Yeah, they're very famous. They're also male-owned, surprise.
They have a lot of sock puppet stores as well. So if you are interested in going out and buying some Lolita, please make sure that you check with a reputable person to make sure that the store is actually legit. Because even eBay, Amazon, Light in the Box, they all sell sock puppets of Milano's items.
EGL, the EGL community on LiveJournal actually has a fairly accurate and up-to-date list of where Milano is selling and under what names they're selling. Really, on the opposite end of that, you have groups like Lolita Collective, Glitzy Wonderland, MyLolitaDress.com.
They're Taobao resellers, so they get the item from Taobao since probably most of us can't speak Chinese. Yeah. So they get it from Taobao for you, and then you pay a little bit more because you have to pay for their translating services and whatnot. But then
whereas Lolita Collective is a reseller of American and Australian brands, so maybe necessarily the brands don't have a site or can't afford a site, so they sell through Lolita Collective. Any other questions? Go for it.
I heard you talk about the outfit a lot, and I love it. The only thing is, I am allergic to a lot of jewelry that's fake. I saw she's got like this really pretty necklace on with the bow, the bows, and then you're not wearing one. Is it oh, you are. I'm sorry about that.
It's okay.
I just didn't know if jewelry was a necessity or if you just brought the outfit together, you should wear it.
Yeah, it's not necessarily. I don't want to say it's not a necessity because it generally is recommended, especially around the wrists because they want you to have some sort of accessorization. But as you can see, like today, I'm wearing a bolero that has some lace around the sleeve, so I don't necessarily have to be wearing bracelets.
And I'm just wearing lace jewelry.
Yeah.
The nice thing about this is a lot of Lolitas. For example, Rachel Decker of Belladonna. She's wonderful. She makes all of her own stuff. She owns a brand based out of Virginia. She, I believe, is allergic to nickel, so the jewelry that she buys and that she also helps resell are all like sterling silver or stainless steel. A lot of Lolitas do have metal allergies, so a lot of Lolita jewelry, even though it is slightly pricier than maybe some costume jewelry you might find at Target, does tend to be made out of non-hypoallergenic materials.
Yeah, and of course, that being said, you don't have to go out and buy brand jewelry in order for it to be Lolita appropriate. For example, the necklace I'm wearing today actually came from the gift shop in Colonial Williamsburg.
Yeah, these came from a little shop in Lewis, Delaware called Guy Stuff, which is actually a male-centric thrift store, but they've recently started carrying jewelry because one of the gentleman's mothers was like, I have all this jewelry, why aren't you carrying jewelry? And they went, okay, Mom, we'll carry jewelry. So
you can really, anything that's workable with Lolita can be worn. So if you do have a metal allergy to certain metals, then it's no problem to try and find something that works for you. And you always could wear something like this that has the little bow up here, because it's attached to the collar, so it wouldn't be bothering you at all. So
and you wouldn't even need to wear a necklace with this because your throat is already ornamented by the bow.
Yeah, it's really just about looking put together. Like if you look in the mirror and go, "I look put together," then good enough.
If you like the way you look and you think you look stylish, then you're probably right. Yeah. Nobody knows how good you're going to look in Lolita better than you will.
One little thing that I wanted to mention before we take any more comments, and this is something that really does draw into the gamer community, is that Lolita has a very strong Western community, and it's probably the most popular Japanese fashion that has gone Western. Lolita is actually a somewhat dying style in Japan. There aren't as many girls wearing it as there once were, but there's an absolutely thriving Western community. I easily say there are millions of Lolitas in this world, and I know that that's not many in the grand scheme of things.
But it's a pretty big subculture.
Yeah, and many, even more people know about it. As Jacqueline and I mentioned, we're a part of a community called Philadelphia, which is based out of Philadelphia. So we'll play on words. We're both from Delaware, actually, so we do commute to our meets. And that's what it's called when a group of Lolitas get together. And so it's really, it's a very fun social setting. We all get together and we do something Lolita appropriate. We might go and get tea together, or we might go and do some boutique shopping. We might go and see a film, or we might go see the symphony. And you get to know a lot of very interesting people. And it's a very comfortable social setting because you automatically know you're going to have at least one thing in common with these people. So I personally have made, I've made some really good friends through Lolita. So,
So it's very similar to gaming in that regard. You're always going to have something in common with the people you're with. You're always going to have the people who are rules lawyering. You're always going to have the people who
we call them brand horse.
We do call them brand horse. I wasn't going to mention that, but you're always going to have the people who are spending more on their accoutrement than, other people. And then you're always going to have the people who have been in the community for a long time and are like, hey, I see you're new. How can I help? What can I do to help you make you feel more comfortable and more welcome in this community? Yes.
I just wanted to say I found a documentary, I was just looking through Facebook, and it was a tiny little episodic documentary series about different lifestyles, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And there was, I think it was in Amsterdam, but I am not sure. I know it was around that area in Europe.
I think I know which one you're talking about, but
yeah, it was a bunch of just friends, and they followed them out on their the community.
Did they follow a designer named Linda Frasian who made Victorian
I think
costumes?
it was a designer. I think they talked about a designer.
Okay, that's a very good documentary to watch. I don't know the name off the top of my head. I have seen it.
It seemed
before,
very
though.
respectful. And
Yeah.
very
Unfortunately, I haven't seen it, but I've heard good things.
Yeah. And then also the second thing was, I don't know if I'm going to get the name right. There's another Japanese movement called, I think, Mori?
Yes.
Is that, how closely related to Lolita is that?
There are Lolita adaptations. It's Mori K or Mori Girl, depending on what you want to call it, and it means forest girl. So there are Lolita adaptions of it, but it's not necessarily the same thing, but they did sort of evolve at the same time. Mori's actually closer to another style called Cult Party K.
Cult Party K was based out of a store in Japan that stole very sort of flowy, lacy, almost ghost-like diaphanous outfits, and it's actually much softer than Lolita because the emphasis is on chiffon and, basically looking like you're flowing through the air. So Mori Girl is much more natural in a way. A lot of my friends who are Mori girls are also Lolitas, and they tend to base their Mori chords off of seasons or off of specific animals. Whereas Lolita, you might be going for a specific style or a specific look. Usually with Mori, you're basing it off of something in nature.
Oh,
And Mori also there's more of a lifestyle associated with Mori, and there aren't as many rules to the Mori girl look as there are to a Lolita look.
But you are expected to comport yourself in a certain way while wearing Mori. You're expected to go, if you're wearing Mori, you're expected to be environmentally friendly.
Mm-hmm.
You're expected to,
You're a little forest girl. You wear a little cabin, you have some outdoorsy habits. That is actually one thing that's very important to note is that differently from Western styles, such as punk or gothic or, cyber goth, things like that, Japanese styles are very centric around personalities as well.
Mm-hmm.
So here it doesn't translate as well. But in Japan, if you're a Lolita, you're expected to act like a Lolita, which you would be very elegant, very proper.
very polite.
Yeah. Here we call that lifestyle Lolita. It's somebody that wears Lolita every single day and adapts Lolita into pretty much everything that they do.
But as you
There are
might have
adults who do
noticed, we've been swearing, we've been sort of, lifting our skirts. It's all very scandalous. But neither Abigail nor I are lifestyle Lolitas, but, we enjoy dressing up in Lolita because sometimes it's just nice to get out of your jeans and t-shirt and, dress in something that does take an hour or more to get into.
Yeah, we do have a little stigma that we say Lolitas are lovelies, and that's kind of a misconception that a lot of newcomers have, where like if girls are being kind of catty in the Lolita community, they'll go, oh, I thought Lolitas were supposed to be lovelies. But not to be negative, but at the end of the day, we're all just people. We all make mistakes. We all say things that we regret. And that's a
We
positive
all want to,
thing.
swear and drink and whatever. So it happens.
Actions.
Yep. Any other
Not
questions?
Jacqueline and I.
Not, no. Any other questions?
Ma'am?
Does your Lolita style blend or bleed over like a little dress? I think you look adorable.
Oh, thank you.
I love it. Do you dabble in it when
Yes.
you're dressing just not as a Lolita?
So there are two styles of thought on this. One is that you never wear any of your Lolita stuff with any street clothes, ever. I am not of that style. Sometimes I'll pull out one of my blouses and I'm like, oh, okay, I want to feel cute today, but I don't really want to go full cord, so maybe I'll just wear this with some slacks or a cute skirt. I actually like to wear this bolero out a lot because it looks amazing with collared shirts. Headpiece, not really so much. It doesn't really... It can work with medieval costumes when I'm LARPing. I'm also a LARPer, so I tend to use a lot of my Lolita stuff in my LARP costumes. But yeah, in a lot of ways, my Lolita style does tend to bleed out into my street clothes.
I don't cross over mine quite as much, but I do wear a couple of other Japanese styles. Sometimes I wear seppuku, and sometimes I wear mori girl. So there are pieces in my Lolita wardrobe that work with those, but just as far as normie clothes, as we might call them,
Or street clothes.
Yeah, street clothes. I don't usually cross my stuff over, but it's it's up to the discretion of the person.
Anything else? Stacy.
We got about 5 minutes left.
Okay. So if you have any questions, you should ask them now. Anybody?
Speak now or hold your peace.
All right, God, don't be so
All
busy.
4 of you look very nice, thank you.
But there's only 3 of us. 4 of us.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Well, you should come up too.
Oh, I'm not.
Well, you look fabulous. Come up.
You're like, oh, they've got all these rules and you have to wear cute shoes. And I'm
Dude,
like,
you look amazing, all right?
I was like, I got real bad shoes for this.
Oh, you're fine. You're rocking the steampunk Lolita look. I'm digging it.
Yeah.
Isn't that the like country garden?
This is actually
Can I
more
actually
sort of
say something about
classic.
your outfit?
Yeah.
What your outfit makes me really think about is that you're a Lolita that's about to go ride a pumpkin.
a little, yeah.
I can't do heels and
So, no,
I
but
do
it's
the
the
swearing, smoking, drinking. It doesn't fit
No,
as
you
well.
you look amazing. This is sort of what we might refer to as more of a steampunk look
Yeah.
because of the top hat. Wow,
Her
like,
dress
look at
is
that
sick.
veil. That's fabulous.
Her dress is definitely classic. She styled it in a steampunk
Yeah.
way.
Not to talk about you like you're not here.
No, it's okay. I blend a lot. I really like Mary Magdalene. It's really, really difficult for me, but this was my first dress, and I bought it in Harajuku when I was.
And they even say
Oh, that was
rules
No.
are written.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were stationed in South Korea, so we went to Japan, and I bought it in Harajuku, and it was the first time I had ever tried on a Lolita dress ever, and I put it on, and I was like, oh Jesus, I'm pretty.
See? That's what I mean? Everybody give her a round of applause because she's totally
Can I take all your pictures now?
Sure.
Yeah.
We can do that as soon as we wrap up.
Okay,
Does anybody have any further questions? 3, 2.
Okay, one thing that I want to say.
All
really
right,
quick.
okay, fine. That was well timed. Good job.
Thank you. If anybody has any questions about any resources, please feel free to follow. I don't want to speak for Jacqueline, but if you want to add me on Facebook, my name is Abigail Davis. You can add me on Facebook.
You can
I'm
absolutely
sure
follow
you
me on
will,
Facebook.
Lolita.
I have business cards that I will hand out after
My
this.
inbox is open. Please add me, and I will talk to you about how to do the thing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So,
Okay.
3, 2, 1. All right, cool. I'm Jax. This is Abigail. This has been Paladins and Petticoats. We hope you enjoyed.